Today on the new Variety Art Show, talent agent and musician JeffLowy. Don't touch that dial.
Once again, we manifest Brad Zinn.
Hi, everybody, and thanks. Thanks for tuning in again to this week's edition of the new Variety Art Show. I'm your host, Brad Zinn, as we prepare to meet another fascinating guest from the world of variety entertainment. Today will be just a little bit different, but we will explain that in just a few minutes. You know, the new Variety Art Show is your chance to meet variety arts performers and other interesting guests as well from the world of entertainment. We've had magicians, clowns, mimes, jugglers, hypnotists, belly dancers, and coming up we'll have guitar players and Polynesian dancers as well. And we hope that by giving you this opportunity to meet a variety arts performer, you'll appreciate what it is that they do a little bit more the next time you have a chance to see a variety arts performer live and in person. And if you have any questions or comments about our program, we'd appreciate it if we could hear from you. And you can get in touch with us at this number, area code. That's the number to call if you have any questions or comments, or if you have any upcoming events that pertain to variety arts entertainment. We'd like to know so we can get the word out on our program. And here's somebody who gets out and gets on our program all the time, Mr. Van Corriton.
Thanks, Brad. Good to be back after our respite that we had.
You know, I know you've just had a little vacation, and you went back to New York. How apropos, because our guest today is from New York.
New York.
New York. What took you back to New York besides an airplane?
My wife. My wife's from New York. And
you went back
once
to
a New Yorker,
relatives?
always a New Yorker, right. Relatives, shows, stores.
Shopping.
Muggers. Yeah.
Well, we're... oh, I hope you didn't have any of those.
Well, my wife actually ran into
Now,
some.
did two hairdressers from New York pin you down and force you to grow this beard, or what? That's the other new addition that we have this time.
Well, it's the Brad Zinn influence.
Oh, I see. Well, you know, I was going to start a contest on this week's show to have people call in and find out whether I should keep the beard or shave it
really?
off. Yeah, I'd like to hear from people.
Great.
And find out what they think. If you want to call us, let us know, should I keep the beard or should I shave it off? We'll take a little poll.
And if you don't care, call anyway.
And you can call and even tell us if you like Van's beard.
I mean, around here, even the director has a beard.
I know.
Of the cameramen
it's almost imperative to have a beard.
So
Listen, we've had some mail. And I wanted to, it's a little note from Lori Finney, Michael Finney's wife, Michael Finney, the comedian.
Yeah, he was wonderful.
She wanted to call and say thanks for having, or write us a note and tell us that Michael was very happy to be on the show, and she was expressing her thanks, and keep them in mind. And Michael's going to be appearing here in the Valley. We're going to get to that in just a few minutes. By the way, Dimension Cable, those of you that see our program on Dimension Cable, want to remind you that we're on Wednesday nights at 10:30, Sunday afternoons at 1:30 in Phoenix and all points east, and beginning right away, I believe, we'll be seen on Dimension West Tuesday nights at 8 o'clock. So if this show happens to get to you before then, tell your friends in Glendale and Peoria and Sun City and Litchfield that it's Tuesday nights now at 8 o'clock. But we have our same time slot for the new grid, so we're very pleased about that.
Wonderful.
And now, tell us about, you had an interesting story that kind of pertains to our guest today in a roundabout way, because...
well, as you know, I play piano, so...
And remind us again where you play piano.
Yeah.
Besides on the keyboards.
Oh, that. Yeah, well, I'm at the Phoenician still, the fabulous Phoenician.
Playing the 9-inch
Which, in
band.
fact, when we were in New York, I picked up the New York Times, and there was a picture of the Phoenician saying the poor Kuwaitis want to make money. And they're making it off of me, I think. But anyway, I'm there for afternoon tea every day from 3 to 5, except when I'm away. And also, I'm doing Mondays, if people want to come out to the good old piano bar at Remington's at the Scottsdale Plaza.
Scottsdale Plaza. Just did a show there recently.
Really?
Yeah, not at the Remington's, but at the hotel.
Plaza.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Was
So
it
tell
good?
us about this. What happened on your trip? to New York.
Anyway,
I don't wanna
I'm
get
there
to-
every Monday. Oh, sorry about
Yeah,
that.
that's okay.
Well, we last year we went and saw a pianist at the Marquis Marriott, and this year we didn't go back to see him. Am I glad? Because we wouldn't have seen him. Can you hold this up?
Yeah.
We would have
Yeah,
seen this gentleman instead, which is a stuffed dummy in a tuxedo. Nobody we know, but a real dummy, because they put in one of those automated pianos and got rid of the live pianist. So
Oh my goodness!
it kind of gave me nightmares. You know, it gives you the willies.
Now,
like,
how did they get away with this? I mean, you know, doesn't the union complain? I mean, New York's a big union town.
he was a union dummy, I guess.
International Alliance of Theatrical Dummies, I guess.
Whatever, it's scary because, you know, I can picture afternoon tea at the Phoenician with some dummy sitting there and just
Don't
think
tell
he
him,
won't
but
bother
they've
the
got one
waitresses.
already.
Yeah. He won't drink their coffee, and, you know, it's...
Oh my goodness! Well,
scary.
let's talk about our guest today, because our guest is from New York,
Yes.
originally from Brooklyn, Brooklyn, and he's a very talented musician, as well as one of the largest bookers of entertainment here in the Valley. He books not only music and bands of all types, but he employs a great number of variety artists as well. His company, Encore Entertainment, caters to the convention and tourism industry here in Arizona, and he brings his perspective on the future of variety arts to the show today. But first, we thought you'd like to see a little sample of Jeff playing for a recent convention at a posh local resort. Happens to be a Marriott's, by the way. When we come back, we'll talk to Jeff Lowy. Don't go away.
Should we stop or should we keep on rocking? You want to keep going? Want to keep the party going? Alright, we got one for you. You all know this one. It's the #1 party tune of all time. It's made famous in the 1960s by a group called the Kings Band.
terrific sounds from our guest today, Jeff Lowy, rocking and a-rolling at one of the local posh resorts here in the Valley, doing what he does best. Thank you for being here, Jeff.
Well, Brad, it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for asking me.
You know, we have an awful lot in common. First of all, I've known you, I think, since almost the day you got out here.
I believe so.
From Brooklyn. And we're the same age, and we've been in show business pretty much all of our life, but you grew up on the East Coast, and I grew up on the West Coast. Why don't you give us a little brief background, when you started in music? Did you have a garage band? Where'd you go to school, and all that sort of thing?
Well, I definitely come from the days of the garage bands, you know, growing up in New York. That was just a great outlet. My parents were happy because it kept me off the street, and played in a variety of rock bands, and actually one of them wound up with some credibility in that we got a recording contract with Buddha Records back in 1974 or 5. I had some tunes that I had written, published, and recorded. So there was a modicum of success there. And then
any top 10 hits that we'd know?
No, I'm embarrassed.
What were some of the titles? Come on.
No, I'd almost rather not say. We're dating back to the dreaded disco era.
This
really
is post-Motown stuff. Huh?
Post-Motown, mid-70s, really bad disco tunes. But the band did well for a while, and I wound up quitting college at that time to spend my full time.
Were you majoring in music in college?
I was a music major at Brooklyn College, where else? And I wasn't doing that well anyway, but it was a good opportunity to leave college. I thought that this was my ticket to stardom, and obviously it turned out not to be.
So what then eventually brought you out here to the Valley?
Well, interestingly, you and I have a mutual acquaintance that I had known from the New York area, and actually he was a friend of my dad's, and I was interested in some opportunities and in getting out of that disco band scene, and came out here and visited and liked the area a lot, thought there were a lot of opportunities. I was 19 years old, so there really wasn't anything holding me back, and moved here in '76.
How about that? Well, that was about the time that we met,
exactly.
The same age, and you went to work for another agent and eventually broke off and formed your own agency. Right. Let me ask you this, because we have an awful lot of corporate clients come from the East Coast out to Arizona. It seems like they always want to see the Cowboys and the Indians and the Rattlesnakes and what have you. But having worked in the entertainment business back east and then out here, what are the East Coast, or how are the East Coast sensibilities maybe a little different than the West Coast, more laid back? Do you find a lot of that, or is it pretty much the same wherever you go?
I think, in my experience in the convention field, that corporate America is corporate America, and it's pretty much bi-coastal approach. I mean, there might be some subtle differences in style, but the things that are important to corporations when they're booking entertainment tend to be pretty level. They're pretty much across the board. They have certain requirements.
Are audiences tougher from back east than they are maybe the West Coast? Are we a little more accepting out here?
The hecklers are more dangerous. Van was talking about the muggers back there, so you have to be a little more gentle with the hecklers from back east. But I think if anything, when Van talks about going back east to see shows and see operas, the audience might be a little more discerning. They might be exposed to more cultural events on a regular basis, so they may be just a little tougher to please overall.
But sometimes I get
the
the feeling they've seen everything, and it gets difficult to come up with something new and different, something that'll keep their attention.
Exactly.
So what are agents looking for? Our show is the new variety art show. We've had a lot of variety arts performers on, from clowns, mimes, jugglers, magicians, hypnotists. What are agents looking for then in these types of acts? If an act comes to your office, what are you looking for so that you know that you can book this act and be pleased with it?
Right. Well, again, I can't speak very well to what the nightclub business is like, because our focus has primarily been on the tourist and convention industry. And I think that we have to focus on our customers and what they want. So as agents or as an agency, we essentially are trying to fill an order for our customer. And they're interested in, obviously, the best quality that they can get in the marketplace. And there's some concerns generally about the local marketplace, not only in Phoenix, but in other small to moderate-sized cities. But they want quality, and they want reliability. and they want dependability, and they want experience in the right context. We talked about that in one of our previous conversations, in that you can have a wonderful act, but if all of your experience has been doing state fairs, corporate buyers want to see some corporate experience. But I think the real thrust of it is if you're trying to promote yourself as an entertainer or performer, you have to think in terms of the customer being that corporate America middle to upper management person, and what they're looking for, which is confidence. They want to have confidence. So you need to really show that you know what their attendees are going to expect, and try to instill that confidence in them. So,
you know, there's a philosophically, being not only an agent but a performer, there are nights that you go out and, well, there's an old saying, let me back up, there's an old saying, you're only as good as your last performance. And there are nights that you go out and you can just give 110% and you just don't seem to be able to get anywhere with these folks. And you go out the next night and do the same exact show for a different group of people, and they eat it up, and you're the best thing since sliced bread. Is that a reflection on the performer, or is it a reflection on the audience, or a combination?
I think it's a combination. I mean, I've worked as a musician, and I'm sure you have worked as a performer in places where you just gave every last ounce of blood, and you used every bit of experience to adapt and to be flexible and sensitive to the audience. But I've been in situations where people just said, "Oh gosh, you guys are the best band we've ever heard, or we've ever had in all of our experience," and you kind of go, how did that happen? It's the same stuff I played at at the Smith wedding last night, and then obviously the times that you just die. I think it's a combination. When you're that successful, it's a combination of the audience being in the right mood, there being some mutual energy that's exchanged, and then there are those tough audiences where no matter what you do, it just doesn't work.
You know, you told me about booking a comedian one time, and he bombed. And the agent, well,
I've bombed.
Well, you know, as booking agents, we've all had acts that, the client just couldn't say enough about good, and then we've had clients that have called back and said, "What was that?" And you had an interesting line about the comedian. Do you remember what I'm talking about?
Not exactly, but
well, they didn't want to pay him because he wasn't funny, and your retort
that's right.
was. And your retort was?
I don't remember. Tell me, Brad. Come on, help me out here.
You said, would you pay him double if he'd have gotten
a standing
ovation?
Right.
And so I think there's a lot of truth in that buyers, as well as agents, as well as performers, have to realize there's going to be a night where it just doesn't happen. But that doesn't mean that the performer hasn't given of themselves.
There's another, actually, local agent who I consider a wise old guy, but whose name I will not mention. The best cliche I ever heard in this business, it makes a lot of sense, was that there's no such thing as a bad act, only a bad agent. And I think that's important. But Ben, you're laughing. Does that strike? Is there any truth to that, or you're saying there are lots of bad acts? I guess.
I can't believe you're that humble. That's all.
Well, the concept being that or the underlying theory being that the agent has a big role to play, and I think being an entertainer really gives you the right perspective. But the agent's role is putting the right act in the right environment.
Exactly.
And
you
helping.
Don't book the act, you book the room.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So we have an obligation to determine who the audience is and determine what the buyer's true needs are.
I always feel if the bartender does his job properly, I've got it made in the shade. That helps.
Exactly, but you have a particular kind of repertoire and a particular kind of style, and if I booked you in a top 40 nightclub, it would be a very uncomfortable situation, not only for the buyer but for the performer. And I think a lot of the mistakes are made in the planning process. So if you look at music as a business and you treat it like any other business, or entertainment as a business, you have to do the appropriate planning in advance to really be successful.
Well, I've always said that show business is made up of two words, and business is twice as big a word as show. So a show is about a third of it. I mean, you got to get through two-thirds of it is the business end of it.
Exactly.
A lot has changed in the last 15 years since you and I really got started, and one of the major changes that we've both seen is the advent of something called a meeting planner. And for those folks that maybe have never dealt with booking entertainment and doing corporate type stuff, describe briefly this chain, because it used to be that if you wanted a magician or a band, you would just look in the yellow pages and call somebody up.
Right.
And generally, if it was a corporate group, they'd point to some secretary in the personnel department and say, you handle all that. Now what has happened is we've got layers of people between the performer and the client. How has that impacted the business? And quickly give us a little definition of who these people are.
Okay. It's always been a source of frustration for me, and I hope none of my clients are watching, because some of them are professional meeting planners. And there was that transition from just the secretary who was, or executive assistant, excuse me, that was assigned those duties, planning everything from the meeting space to the meals to the hotel accommodations, etc. There was that transition from that person to a more professional and polished person who was able to negotiate better deals and who had a smaller focus and a purer area of expertise. And it used to be that either a local resort or the meeting planner would contact entertainers directly, like you said. I think it was positive that that agents became general contractors, and if they act like general contractors, there's a definite niche to be filled there. There's a definite service valued service to be provided. But then there's been a couple of more transformations in the industry to where you have, let's say, the corporation, that corporate buyer in Milwaukee, okay, the end user, if you will, who hires an incentive company, and those are usually large national firms, to develop a whole incentive program for their sales staff or marketing staff.
Now,
or
these
whatever.
are like bonus trips and things like
exactly.
this. So our folks out there
Right.
watching know what an incentive is. If you do your job and sell so many units this year, you get to go to Hawaii or Phoenix or wherever.
Exactly, and Scottsdale particularly is a good incentive destination.
Well, we've got more five-star resort hotels here than any other place in the country, with the exception, I think, of Florida.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful market. It's a wonderful destination. There's there's a big city infrastructure supporting it. So the industry has validity in that regard. But so the end user goes to the incentive house, who really designs the entire program, how many units you have to sell, et cetera, et cetera. That incentive company, since they have no real strong contacts in the local marketplace, actually contact a second type of company, which grew from being ground operators, bus tour companies, and airport transportation companies to being destination management companies. So there's a nice little, it's almost like sanitation engineer. There's a nice euphemism supporting what they do. And these are companies that really do a lot. I mean, they are the local contact for the incentive house or even for the corporate meeting planner, and they do everything from tours to line up the entertainment.
Right. And then they get in touch with a hotel, right?
They get in touch with a hotel, who gets in touch, or they get in touch directly with a general contractor.
Sometimes, but it gets really confusing when they get in touch with a hotel,
Right.
and then the hotel gets in touch with an agent, and then the
Exactly.
agent calls maybe a subcontractor, which finally
Right.
ends up booking the juggler.
Right.
And I think it's difficult for people to understand how many layers that this goes through, and creates sometimes unrealistic expectations.
Exactly, because, and I was going to say that point particularly, is that the end user winds up paying, well, with 3 or 4 people in the middle, all of whom are buying and selling. And at some point you might want to explain to your viewers the difference between charging the commission and buying and selling. But all of those middle type people are
Right.
buying and selling. So they purchase the act for $200, they turn around and they sell it for $400. That person buys it for $400, turns around and sells it for $600. And by the time it gets to the end user, by the time that theme event comes around, or by the time that show happens, that $200 act, which is usually a really good act for $200, becomes a really poor act for $1,000.
Yeah. So the question becomes, and we're quickly running out of time.
Okay.
We could sit and talk all day, and I'd love to.
I know, we didn't even cover probably half of it.
I know, you're going to have to come back. So the reason to use a booking agent, in other words, now that we've explained all this, there are probably folks out there thinking, well, to heck with it, I'll just call and book the act directly. And there are some minefields in there. Why should somebody use a booking agent as opposed to calling and booking direct? Defend your industry is what
I will, and I do believe that we really serve an important function in the food chain, if you will. There's just economies of scale. I think if you wanted to boil it down to just a business way of thinking, we have an agent, and there are a lot of reputable agents, establish a network of contacts, and we're able to mass market, if you will, a particular act. A lot of acts locally freelance, and that's probably the best way to go because no one agency controls enough work. But an agent will place you in the jobs. They'll handle all the contractual arrangements. And they'll allow the act to really focus on what the act should do, which is honing their skills.
Which is to perform.
And you don't want to be you want to be what you do. You don't want to necessarily be a marketer of what you do.
Right. It's very difficult to be the hunter and the rabbit. Tell us real quick, what do you think? What are your feelings about Variety Arts Entertainment? We've only got about 2 minutes left here.
Okay.
Since we're talking about variety artists, you book a lot of them. What do you see as the future of variety arts? Is there a big demand? Is it waning?
I think that with the advent of, we talked about this the other day, the comedy clubs, I think there is a really good potential future for variety acts. We saw no live entertainment, and now we see a nationwide network of entertainment venues. Right now it's for comedians, but we see that expanding to including magicians and jugglers and all sorts of variety acts.
Kind of like a new vaudeville.
I agree. Yeah, I think so. I think that vaudeville will make a return, and these people will have a lot of venues to display.
Describe if a performer is out there watching and they want to be considered by an agent to be booked. What do you look for, real quick? What are the
We look for
qualities?
we look for a really good support material, and we look for reliability, and we look for a quality act. We want to know that.
So you got to be available, have a up-to-date phone number, a resume, black and whites, photographs,
in that much detail.
videotape.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Super. Well, we've had a blast today talking to agent and musician Jeff Lowy, and we really didn't cover half the stuff that we were going to. Van, we wanted to say thank you for being here, and tell us real quick about that necktie you're wearing.
Jerry Garcia from the Grateful Dead designed this, speaking of musicians who have to go into other fields because dummies are taking over.
Jerry Garcia, one of the Deadheads, designing that tie. You'll be here next week. Jeff, thanks once again for being here.
Brad. I enjoyed it.
And you folks out there, thanks for joining us here on the New Variety Art Show. You're the ones that make it possible. We'll see you again next week. Same public access time, same public access channel. And remember, support variety arts in your community. Bye-bye, everybody.